Welcome to Malpractice Podcast.
So, are you ready to get started?
I'm so ready to get started.
I'm so glad we planned that.
We have to plan things because we never know whose turn it
We're
is.
down.
And also,
Yeah,
I've been
correct.
looking forward to recording. I have so much fun when we record, number one. And number two, I'm drinking a peaches and cream.
Oh, hell yeah.
A peaches and cream shake from Whataburger. If you don't live in Texas, I'm so fucking
Slaps.
sorry. You cannot have this. It's not for you.
Slaps.
It's a peaches and cream milkshake, and it's the best thing I've ever had. Have you tried these?
No, but I know that shit slaps.
It literally slaps so hard. Jessica is recording with her dog in the room, which we'll just see how that goes.
She's so cute, but she's a monster.
She has no understanding of what personal space is.
1,000%. She has no idea. Never heard of her.
Oh, I'm Sid.
I'm Jess. This is Corey.
Yeah, if you hear dog panting, that's because this is a podcast about milkshakes and rescue dogs
Corey. It's dead ass her.
with high levels of anxiety. So this is Malpractice Podcast, and we now have a download on every single continent. Except Antarctica, and we'll get those chilly bastards one day.
Wow.
That's
How
what
many people live on Antarctica?
Oh, I actually know this answer. I think it's like 300 or some shit. It's a very low number.
Honestly, y'all, you have bigger problems.
It's like researchers only. Like you have to, because like why would you go there if you're not doing something specific there? Like no one lives there on purpose besides to do research.
Do penguins live there?
Yes.
It's a fun research project. I do love a penguin.
They don't live on the North Pole, and they do live in Antarctica, I think.
So they're not with Santa. That
Correct.
is all a lie.
I maybe have that
Wow.
swippity swapped, but I could be wrong.
Ah, damn it.
I think I'm right though.
Feels right.
I'm gonna stake my entire professional
You do what you need to do.
career on being right about penguins, which I know very little about.
I did a research project on penguins
When?
in 3rd grade, and they had it like for years,
Mhm.
like as an example of how good to do research.
Oh my god. You're a 3rd grade star.
I'm a shiny star.
I made when I was in high school, I dressed up as Rasputin, and I wore... Do you remember that?
Oh shit, yeah.
I wore a long beard, and I had weird long fingernails and like a black cloak.
You're such an artsy nerd.
For those of you who don't know me in high school, I made my, I think, boyfriend at the time, who's also a tall redhead, so it was real weird. I made,
Oh god.
the relationship was weird, not this particular thing was hilarious. I made him wear a dress and I kidnapped him. He was the princess that I kidnapped as Rasputin.
Oh my god.
And I had like a chest-length black beard. It was really cool.
Yikes. Big fucking yikes.
It was cool, don't lie.
I know, but I'm just thinking now about your high school relationships.
Oh, you should never think about those. I don't.
Same.
Straight up, no one should think about. You should never think about past relationships, period. Except when you're like, oof, that was a mistake.
That was a big fuck up on me. That's on me.
Have you ever seen the TikToks or like the Instagram Reels things? Where people like remember something and they're like, they like wince.
Yeah, it'll be like,
You know what I'm talking about?
It's like that, dun, 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 and it's all day. You're like,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They like wince. That's how I feel every time I think about a previous relationship. I'm like, God, you were
Right.
dumb.
I'm like, what were you doing?
What was I thinking? Why don't I respect myself?
Hey, that's a bop. What was I doing? What was I thinking? Why don't I respect myself?
TM. That's a TM.
That's a TM.
That's our new malpractice intro music.
Well, I wish. That'd be so funny.
I'm sorry if this is the first time you're listening and my voice is all scratchy. I normally don't sound this hoarse.
Dude,
but
your voice sounds the same, so.
It does? Okay, Eric
Yeah.
was like, you need to record yourself and see if you think your voice sounds scratchy first. And I was like,
Okay, chief sound engineer.
Chief sound engineer? My husband is our chief sound engineer, chief milkshake getter.
Aw.
He got me a milkshake today. And he got fries without even asking. That's how long we've been married.
As I had, you know what? I shouldn't say that because I will go get a burger, no fries.
What? Why? Who?
Literally, I am trash.
Do you hate yourself?
I hate myself. I will get it for her.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, you didn't say you wanted fries. And I'm like, who hurt me?
Who doesn't want fries?
Who hurt my own self? And Michelle never does that. Like, she is like, you were hungry, so I got you a burger and fries and a slice of pizza and a milkshake and I got you a chocolate bar. Like, what do you want? I got you popcorn. I got you an apple and peanut butter in case you want to be healthy. Like, that's a Michelle.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, you said you were hungry, so
here's
I got you
a
bag of
burger.
chips. Like, I don't know what you want.
You said you wanted a
I'm
burger.
just like-
Here's one cheeseburger.
One, yeah. I the last time that happened, I was like so ashamed at myself. I was like, wow.
First of all, if you have questions about whether or not someone wants French fries,
They do.
and you're not sure, the answer is yes. Pull the trigger on the fries.
know.
That's the
I
answer.
know. I don't know what's
That's
wrong
the
with
answer
me.
to life's question.
But I'm better now. I'll just get everything now. I'm like, whatever.
If I have any questions, I'm like, milkshake too. Throw it on. Okay. We have to talk about Dark Waters and The Devil We Know. We have to talk about both of them right now.
Dude.
If you haven't listened to last week's episode already, you have to listen to it because Jess did an amazing job covering the DuPont chemical dumping scandal. And I want to talk about everything.
Dude, I fucking told you.
Let's go.
It feels like conspiracy theorist,
It feels
thing,
like it should be a conspiracy theory.
but
Yeah. It's not. Number one. Also, they used to put it inside popcorn bags.
popcorn. Which can you,
I eat popcorn every day. That's not acceptable.
dude? You know I do.
Okay. Also, they had cancer clusters wherever they were dumping these chemicals. They had cancer clusters. We didn't talk about this last week, and I want to talk about it. The baby that was born with the facial deformities he grew up and has a wife, and he had a baby.
Yeah.
And they were like, there's a 50-50 chance your baby has abnormalities, and the baby was born completely
No.
normal.
Sue's. I think his mom's name was Sue,
Yeah, I think you're right.
and her son.
What
Yeah.
else? Oh, also, the farmer,
Wilbur.
Wilbur Tennant, and his wife both died of cancer 2 years after, I think after the documentary came out or before the documentary came out. But 2 years after the lawsuit was settled.
I know Wilbur.
Can you imagine being like the whistleblower in your small town and the only source of business?
Dude, it's wild.
It's crazy.
It's a wild ride.
Also, we said something last week about 1 part per billion, and I wanted to reiterate what that means, because 1 part per billion is like, if you're not into like chemistry and shit, that sounds like nothing, right? But 1 part per billion is literally 1 drop of C8 in an Olympic-sized swimming pool, and you shouldn't drink water that has anything more than that. They knew at that point that 1 drop of water in an Olympic-sized swimming pool could be toxic, and they were dumping like 10,000 gallons at a time.
It's not a conspiracy.
Yeah. So if you haven't listened to last week's episode, you need to go listen to it because
Stop listening to this one right now and go back
and
last
listen.
week.
This isn't going to build on that or anything, but
It has nothing to do with that, but you are out of, order, sir.
you're out of order.
Ma'am.
Whatever you're doing, stop it. If you're listening to this, I guess I know what you're doing, but stop it and go listen to last week if you haven't already. Jess, you did a really good job with that, and it blew my mind.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And Eric's mind, too. That is a compliment to blow Eric's mind.
Eric came back from listening to it. He listened to it on his way to work, and he came back and he was like, do we have Teflon stuff in our house? And I'm like, I'm sure we do.
Yes, you do. It's everything. Or at least it was for a long time.
Yeah. I went on a tangent. We're throwing away our old pans.
I threw away pans.
We're throwing away pans. I'm no longer microwaving stuff in plastic. You gotta get your shit together.
Get it. Get it out.
We
Throw
all
away your
have
pans.
to, because people are out to get your ass.
They are. They dead ass are out to get you.
What did we talk about earlier? We were on the phone and I was like, why would they do that though? And you were like, because it's so cheap to do it this way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's cheap to just while out on people.
It is.
Listen, I think that everybody in the decision-making process in that company at that time should go to jail.
Oh, this is what we were talking about. It was like that episode from Parks and Rec where they were like, you go straight to jail. Jail.
Yeah. You dump a chemical, jail.
Jail. Jail for a long time.
Think about dumping a chemical, jail for a long time.
Jail.
He's like, you wouldn't think about this, but jail.
Jail, yeah. That's extra jail. Oh, jail. Certainly jail.
Are you ready to get down to business?
Joey to sing Let's Get Down to Business again.
Kind of, yeah.
Let's get down to business.
We can't afford that song.
Nope.
Okay. Today we're going to talk about a very popular topic in the U.S., ALS, or amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, also known as Lou Gehrig's disease. It's going to get a little sad in here today, and then it's going to get much happier, so bear with me.
I don't believe you.
I promise it gets better. Okay.
This is a bummer episode brought to you by Science and Sydnee.
Thanks, Science. I want to get a picture. I want to make our next t-shirt with a picture of maybe a cat's face or a raccoon, perhaps, and it just says "Thanks, Science."
No, a moose.
A moose. It should be a moose. What am I thinking? It's a moose. It's absolutely a moose.
Or a tiger only.
Moose or tiger, and the tiger or moose is saying "Thanks, Science." That's our general vibe.
Y'all, my dog, I'm so sorry, in the background. She is like wild.
She's wilding out.
I'm going to ignore her, but she's sitting right there staring at me.
And we're going to ask that you also ignore her. Don't give her any attention. She can't handle it. Okay, I feel like we might be trying to delay the inevitable here.
I am. Authentically.
Okay. So ALS is a progressive, meaning it gets worse over time, neurodegenerative disease, meaning it kills nerve cells in the brain and spinal cord. The early symptoms usually include things like muscle weakness, followed by atrophy of the limb and trunk muscles, usually including weakness or loss of the muscles that control critical functions like speaking, swallowing, and breathing, which is why it ultimately usually becomes a problem. Because you don't really think about needing those muscles to breathe, but they're actually really critical, right? So people know a lot more about this disease because of really prominent figures who had it, like Stephen Hawking, who died in 2018 at the age of 76. So what do you know about Stephen Hawking already?
That he had some machine that spoke for him.
Yeah, okay. That's what like most people know. Yeah, fair. So before we get too into the disease itself, I want to take a little sidebar to talk about Stephen Hawking because he was an insanely gifted and incredible individual. And the fact that he lived to be 76 with ALS that was diagnosed in his early 20s is actually really astounding, and I'll tell you why.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't it, like, kill you really fast?
Yes. So most people aren't diagnosed with ALS until the average age of 55, so relatively later in life compared to some progressive diseases, but they have an average life expectancy of between 2 years and 5 years after diagnosis, with the average being about 14 months.
Jesus Christ.
And Stephen Hawking began showing symptoms of ALS in his early 20s, so he was confined to a wheelchair by the early 1960s, and he began having difficulty speaking and verbalizing in the 1970s, and then he had to have a full tracheotomy in 1985. Only 5% of the people diagnosed with ALS experience it before the age of 30, so that's relatively uncommon. For those of you who know his name, because basically everyone does, he's like a household name, right? But don't really know exactly what he did, Stephen Hawking made some huge contributions to science during his lifetime, including our understanding of black holes. He also made really important progress in linking general relativity and quantum mechanics to the laws of thermodynamics. If you've never read it, I highly recommend his book, A Brief History of Time. He is an incredible scientific communicator and has an uncanny ability to make really complex shit really easy to digest and understand. So, like I said, while the average life expectancy of someone diagnosed with ALS is sadly about 14 months, Stephen Hawking lived for nearly 60 years after he began first showing signs.
Do we know how he was able to live so long, like, and defy the odds? Because that is wild.
Yeah, honestly, that's a really good question. And I read this one article that was published by the Scientific American, where they basically asked a neurologist who runs the ALS Center at the University of Pennsylvania, and they're considered like kind of the expert on ALS. And his name is Leo McCluskey, and he basically said that there were several different versions of the disease, and that the type Stephen Hawking probably had would have progressed very, very slowly, which is really uncommon for ALS. But it also gives everyone a little bit of hope that we can learn more about the disease and try to come up with a cure for it. So,
Oh, God.
yeah.
That's
Okay.
crazy.
Yeah, and so probably it was a combination of he had very, very good care, right? He was like a Cambridge professor. Like he had excellent quality of care. He started treating it really early. But also he just happened to get lucky and had like a very slowly progressing version. So that's
good.
probably why.
That is a good thing, at least. Good job. You
Yeah.
wove one in here.
Exactly. Okay, back to our regularly scheduled programming of sad shit, but also some really interesting stuff.
Sad shit with Sydnee and SCIENCE.
Sydnee and SCIENCE tell you sad shit.
Literally, that is the song.
Okay, the term ALS came from this guy named Jean-Martin Charcot. Charcot.
Wow.
That was my French accent.
Wow.
Jean-Martin Charcot. If you're listening to this in French.
You just said it confidently enough that I was like, yeah.
Yeah, that sounds right. I don't know. If you're listening to this in
definitely
France,
don't
please
fucking know.
don't write us an ugly email.
You can write it if you want. I'm gonna delete it when I see it.
Bye. We don't need that negativity in our life. We tried.
Bye.
Okay, so he discovered the disease ALS in 1869. So it's been like pretty well known for quite a while. And previously, a different neurologist named Charles Bell had described some patients who likely had ALS, but no one really knew what to call it until old Charcot coined the term. Okay.
Good job, Charcot. I get. So he named it, but this other guy discovered it.
Correct.
God.
Yeah. It was actually first called Charcot's disease. And that I decided.
That sucks.
I know. But I decided also I kind of want a disease named after me. Maybe that's my new career goal.
No, you do not.
I don't. Are you sure?
Okay, are you serious?
I feel like it would be cool.
Swine flu.
No, I don't want swine flu. I want the monkeypox.
Disease. Monkeypox, yeah. Monkey disease.
There's a case of monkeypox in Texas.
In
I don't
Dallas.
know what it is and I cannot.
I can't. I'm like, what else do we need to go through as a country?
Just monkeypox, apparently. Okay, so old Sharky was a French neurologist who discovered...
Sharky is a cute name.
Right? Isn't that cute? Sharky
yeah,
McSharkington?
That's a good nickname.
Okay. So he's a French neurologist who discovered lots of different neurological diseases, and he developed some of the tests that people still use to figure out if people are having central or peripheral nervous system issues. Cool. Fun fact.
Cool science facts.
Yeah.
Sharky.
That was a fun fact. It was first named Charcot's disease. Another fun fact, Sharky was a neurologist who dabbled in psychology, and he was actually a huge influence on Freud.
Oh, God. So he was a psychopath.
Yes.
Great.
Yes, just wait. It gets worse.
No, well, I knew it. Because Freud is crazy.
Yeah, right.
Freud is a psychopath. I literally just re-listened to that episode the other day.
We spent a whole episode on Freud. If you haven't listened to it, go listen because that dude is wild.
He's a weirdo.
So Sharky was super intelligent with lots of different discoveries. He even first described MS, muscular sclerosis, before that was a thing. However, like pretty much every single famous person from the 1800s, he had some super problematic views, including some thoughts about whether or not Jewish communities were more genetically predisposed to neurological issues, which...
Wow, he's in good company because Freud is also a piece of shit.
Right. Which maybe he just had a weird theory and wanted to test it out, but he definitely contributed to the rise in French anti-Semitism at the time. So there's that.
Fuck you, Sharky.
Yeah. Here's a third fun fact. If you're anti-Semitic, then you are also an asshole.
Yeah, facts.
There.
These are
I
facts.
said it.
Proven things with science and Sydnee.
Correct. If you're anti-Semitic and a scientist, which seems to be a common occurrence. Why is that a thing?
Why is that?
I don't understand
What's wrong with them? But you know what? We did talk about in that Nazi episode that Nazi scientists were already thinking these things before the rise of the Nazi control.
Yeah.
So what's going on?
I don't know. These are not my people. I don't know them. If you're from the 1800s, you probably sucked.
Yeah.
That's like all of history. That should be the title of every history book. Done. That's it. Okay. Another really prominent figure who had ALS and is actually the namesake for the disease in the US is a super famous baseball player named Lou Gehrig. Not famous to me because I don't know anything about baseball, and obviously not famous to you because you don't know anything about baseball. But people who know baseball...
Hey, you don't know me.
Yes, I do.
But I don't know shit.
I know. People who know baseball know him as like one of the best baseball players of all time. Like they call him the best first baseman of all time. Okay.
Is first base... Well, first of all, I know what it is because I played softball.
Yeah.
In baseball, is it like a hard position?
Yeah, I think so.
Pretty much everything's hard except what I played.
What did you play?
Like fucking left field. Like
nothing comes there.
No.
I think first base is hard because I think they put like
everyone's trying to get people out at first base.
Yeah, I think they put like the big guys who are like fast on first base, right? Am I right, or is that third base? Whatever. I don't know. Anyway, what I do know about him is that he played for the Yankees, and the nickname that they gave him was the Iron Horse because he was like really strong and like.
Damn, that is a
strong nickname, right?
Yeah, that's a good one.
And this is back in the like 1920s and 30s. So, if you're like me and you know literally nothing about baseball, you pretty much probably only know of him as ALS, aka Lou Gehrig's disease.
Yeah, literally.
Basically. He was like an insanely talented baseball player who played for the Yankees from 1923 to 1939.
The golden years.
He was right. Or not. I don't know. I don't know anything about baseball, so
no,
could be.
Not. It's big not.
He was a 7-time consecutive All-Star, a Triple Crown winner, and a 2-time American League MVP. All of these are big deals, apparently.
You're like, apparently an American League MVP is a big deal. Like, yeah, it is.
He was inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame in 1939, and he was the first player ever to have his number, which was 4, retired by a team.
That's so cool.
I know. He held the record for a really long time for the most consecutive games played. He played in 2,130 games in a row. Like, he never missed a game.
Honestly, though, why? Why? That's
so many games. Yeah, I was talking to Eric about this. And he was like, well, they wouldn't do that now because players are all worried about, like, overuse and getting injured. But apparently they did it back in the day.
Eric knows everything about baseball. He's our chief baseball historian.
I told him this record, and he was like, you know who broke that record? Cal Ripken. And I was like, no, why would I know that?
Who the fuck is Cal Ripken?
Ripken.
Oh, Ripken.
Yeah, right. But we've been playing Jeopardy lately. Eric and I have.
You are some big fucking nerds.
We're also
We've
old
been playing
people.
Jeopardy in our spare time. You know what I've been doing? Watching Will and Grace.
First of all, I love Will and Grace. Shout out to Sean Hayes, who is my special friend. I love him so much. Do you love Sean Hayes?
Absolutely. Yes.
He's so funny. He's on one of the podcasts I listen to. I love him. Okay, but so we play Jeopardy at night now, and we compete with each other because we're big nerds.
Oh my God. Okay.
There's always a baseball category. Like every 5 games, there's a baseball category, and Eric always just like auto wins because I'm like, I literally don't know anything about baseball. I don't even think I know the rules.
Because why?
Right.
Because it's not even America's favorite pastime.
It's not?
That America's favorite pastime is listening to this podcast.
Yes, it is. Bingo.
I win Jeopardy today.
We're going up against baseball. That's right. You heard it here first.
I'll take on baseball.
Come at us, big baseball.
You can drink beer and eat crappy food while listening to this podcast if you want.
I do it all the time.
Me too.
I do it while we record.
I'll do it again. Bop, bop, bop.
Bop, bop, bop. So, okay. Here's the thing, though. He played for this, like, 2,100 games in a row before one day voluntarily taking himself out of the lineup. And it was a move that shocked fans and coaches alike. Like, everybody was like, what are you doing?
Big gasp
right.
from the audience.
And he told everyone that he was choosing to bench himself for the good of the team. What they didn't know is that for quite some time, Lou had been struggling with an undiagnosed illness that was later identified as, you guessed it, ALS.
Oh.
He was diagnosed and forced to retire from baseball at the age of 36, and he died 2 years after his diagnosis with from the disease.
Dang.
His wife took him to the Mayo Clinic for testing, and after he was diagnosed, he returned to New York, and there was like a big platform full of cheering fans and a huge crowd of like Boy Scouts and stuff wishing him good luck. And he leaned forward to his wife and said, "They're wishing me luck, and they don't know that I'm dying."
Oh.
Which is so sad.
Such a fucking bummer.
After he was diagnosed and his muscles started giving out on him, he stood in front of a packed Yankee Stadium and he gave a speech called the Luckiest Man Alive speech that is still considered one of the best moments in American sports history. So I'm going to read part of it to you, and excuse me if I cry because it's so sweet. Okay. Fans, for the past 2 weeks, you've been reading about the bad break I got. Yet today I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth. I have been in ballparks for 17 years and have never received anything but kindness and encouragement from you fans. Look at these grand men. Which of you wouldn't consider it the highlight of his career just to associate with them even for one day? Sure, I'm lucky. When the New York Giants, a team you would give your right arm to beat and vice versa, sends you a gift, that's something. When everybody down to the groundskeepers and those boys in white coats remember you with trophies, that's something. When you have a father and a mother who work all their lives so that you can have an education and build your body, that's a blessing. When you have a wife who has been a tower of strength and shown more courage than you dreamed existed, that's the finest I know. So I close in saying that I might have been given a bad break, but I've got an awful lot to live for. Thank you.
Aww.
The New York Times account the following day called it one of the most touching scenes ever witnessed on a baseball field that made even, quote, hard-boiled reporters swallow hard. Today, the Lou Gehrig Memorial Award is given annually to the MLB baseball player who best exhibits Gehrig's integrity and character. The Yankees proclaimed Tuesday, July 4th, 1939, Lou Gehrig Appreciation Day, and they still celebrate it every year to this day at Yankee Stadium.
On the 4th of July?
Yeah. They said that's Lou Gehrig's Day now.
That's actually, you know what? Love that. This is something we should celebrate. It's this man.
Right?
Yeah.
And they give his award every year to the player with the most integrity.
Good.
That's such a nice legacy.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing?
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
It's fucking sucks for him because he seems like a good guy.
Yeah. It's really sad.
What happened to his wife?
She lived for a long time. And she did a lot of cool stuff.
I wouldn't.
I don't know if she remarried. I don't think she did.
I never would. Michelle, you heard it here first. Actually, I tell you that all the time.
Would you remarry?
No.
I don't know if I would. That'd be really sad.
Are you joking? Have you met Michelle?
Can you imagine though? That'd be hard.
I hope you know, and I mean this with all sincerity, if Michelle was somehow taken from me, I would move into your house.
I know you would.
So I would not be alone. I would bother the fuck out of Eric for the rest of his life.
You could move into our apartment.
There, see? You don't need an au pair. I got you.
Exactly. You'll just take care of our kids. Donezo. Yeah. And then we could be a 3-income household. Don't die, Michelle. But
I'm down.
It's good to know that you have a plan.
Yeah.
Okay. Also, do you remember a social media trend that made the rounds like a little while ago where people would either donate money to ALS or they would dump a ice cold bucket of water on their head?
Yeah, we did it. Me and my dad.
Yeah, so did I. So the purpose of that little trend was to raise awareness about the motor neuron disease called ALS.
Oh.
So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the disease and I'll come back to the ice bucket trend. So what I mean by a motor neuron disease is radiating out from your spinal cord. There are these long branching nerves that connect to your muscle tissue. And the nervous input in the form of an electrical signal from your spinal cord travels down that nerve and basically tells the muscle tissue to move. So whenever you pick your hand up to take a drink of your coffee, for instance, that's the function of an electrical signal traveling down from these peripheral nerves that connect with the muscles in your arm. And then the muscle responds by flexing and picking up your coffee cup, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can basically think of motor neurons coming from your spinal cord as like the electrical cords inside the walls of your house, right? You flip a switch or you turn a knob or whatever, and the electrical system tells a light to turn on.
Okay. The light switch makes sense.
Yeah, that's basically it. There's like a connection in your brain, connects to your spinal cord, and then from your spinal cord, it goes out to the muscle. That's it.
It turns the lights on.
Turns the lights on, yeah.
Okay.
So in the case of a motor neuron disease like ALS, you lose control of those nerves that control voluntary and involuntary movement. So you lose the ability to walk, talk, stand. Those are all voluntary actions. But you also lose the ability to swallow and even breathe on your own. We don't really think about the fact that muscles like the diaphragm and the intercostal muscles between your ribs are actually responsible for your ability to breathe. You don't really think about those muscles being involved in respiration. People mostly just consider the lungs. But eventually, when you lose the ability to control those muscles, you lose the ability to breathe because you can't expand your chest in and out to breathe, right? So, that is what usually makes ALS fatal, is the loss of the ability to breathe. So,
okay. That makes sense.
Right. And it's a degenerative disease, meaning that it progresses and gets worse over time. And when it first starts, you lose those connections between the nerves and the muscles. And this is called a loss of innervation. So when that happens, the muscle also starts to atrophy.
So muscles atrophying means they get smaller and weaker, right? I've heard that word before.
Yeah, exactly. The full name of ALS is amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. A means no. Myo comes from the Greek word for muscle, and trophic means nourishment. So amyotrophic altogether means no muscle nourishment.
Okay.
And when a muscle doesn't have nervous input or nourishment, it withers away or atrophies, right? So if you stop moving a muscle for a long time, you may, or you lose innervation, the muscle will get way smaller and you'll have lots of trouble using it, which this actually even happens to astronauts to a certain degree.
Yeah. This is where I think I heard it before.
Exactly. So it used to happen, especially in like early space flight, when you're not in gravity, you don't have to like hold your head up on your own, right? It stays up by itself. And the 0G just kind of holds everything in place. So you're not using those neck muscles to keep your head up. So the first astronauts who spent significant time in space would come back and they like couldn't hold their heads up because the muscles in their neck had atrophied.
Jesus.
Now they do all kinds of stuff to like strengthen the muscles while they're in space because they know about that problem. But
right.
Yeah, that's what atrophying means. Basically, you're right. Okay. Going back to the ALS terminology, the term lateral indicates the areas in a person's spinal cord where the nerve cells control and stimulate the muscles are located. And sclerosis comes from the fact that these nerves in the brain and spinal cord degenerate and they leave scarring or hardening in the area. Now, one of the things that was super notable about Stephen Hawking's case is that he lived with it for a really long time. And the reason for that is that there are different variants of the disease. Some are more severe, and others take longer to progress to a state where you completely lose function. Unfortunately, the disease is really poorly understood, but there are some categories that the doctors can put patients into to help figure out how quickly it will probably progress. And then also things like NG tubes or feeding tubes can be used to help with nutrition, and they can basically get a tracheotomy that helps them put in a breathing apparatus and things like that. So now, because there are no really effective treatments that have been developed as of right now, most of what people get when they go to the doctors is life-extending supportive care. So, part of the issue with ALS is that it's a pretty rare disease, so it's a lot harder to study.
Well, that's good at least. Like, how rare is it?
Yeah. That's a good question. So there are about 5,000 new cases annually in the US and 16,000 new cases in the world, so comparatively pretty rare, but it's almost always completely debilitating and nearly always fatal. Well, I mean, it's always fatal. One of the scariest things about ALS is that it's not always inherited. So who gets it is actually kind of random to some extent from what we know right now.
That is trash.
Right. About 90% of cases are what we call sporadic, meaning that there's no genetic component or family history of ALS. And that means that researchers are still trying to figure out exactly what causes 90% of sporadic cases, which is pretty scary if you think about it.
Yeah, that is scary.
They think it may be some combination of like genes that we haven't really identified yet, environmental exposure to some type of like toxin or infectious agent, maybe viruses, or maybe even physical trauma, because they know that people who are in the military are nearly twice as likely to get ALS as the non-military population. But the really scary thing is that we just don't know why 90% of those cases happen.
That feels like not right in 2021.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
It's so crazy.
And 10% of the cases are inherited through one or more of 25 different possible mutated genes. When it's genetic, it's considered to have an autosomal dominant pattern of inheritance, meaning that the mutation is on one of the chromosomes that are not sex determining, so not the X or the Y. And dominant means that if one of your parents had ALS and you get their copy of that gene, you have a 100% chance of getting ALS.
Fuck.
Right. So if you get that copy of the gene, it's going to happen, which is really unfortunate and terrifying. But now we know that we can do testing for things like that in advance. So in lots of different neurodegenerative diseases, it's really hard to get down to the root cause of what's going on because it's really hard to study the brain in living people, right?
No, don't do that.
Obviously, it's not a great idea to like get in the brain and take out tissue samples while a person is still using it.
So that's why scientists who study these things use animals like mice, right?
Yeah, exactly. So we can use animal models to kind of closely replicate what's happening in the human body and use different genetic and chemical manipulations to see whether the disease progression gets better or worse. Now, because we don't know exactly what causes ALS, it's really hard for an animal model to perfectly represent the disease in humans, but each model offers some advantages. For instance, if researchers start to think that a certain human gene might be involved in the disease, we can use molecular biology techniques to insert that genetic mutation into a model organism like a mouse. Some of this is possible in part thanks to the invention of CRISPR-Cas9 genome editing, which we did a whole episode about in season 1. So if you're interested in hearing more about that, go check it out.
That's a good episode.
Thanks.
I learned a lot in that episode.
Yeah, me too. I learned a lot making it, honestly. The other way that animal models can be really useful is in testing drug development. So, for instance, if researchers come up with a new drug that they think may slow the progression of ALS or help with some of the symptoms, they can use these animals that have the same mutations that they think cause ALS, and they can treat them with a potentially helpful new drug. If the drug slows down how quickly the nerve cells are dying, or it seems like the animal's behavior or physiology is getting better, then after lots of really rigorous testing, the drug will move on to clinical trial phase, where it's introduced to human patients. Now, there are actually 5 FDA-approved drugs that are being used to treat ALS to some extent, but first, I want you to guess the approximate cost of developing a new drug to stop or slow down the progression of a disease like ALS.
Millions of dollars.
It's actually between $2 and $3 billion.
Goddamn. That's why what they did with that
vaccine
is so cool.
I know. It's crazy. Number one, it's crazy that they got it done so quickly because it normally takes about 10 years to get something through clinical trials and FDA approvals, which is crazy, right?
Yeah, super crazy. What do you think it would feel like to hold $2 billion? Because I can't. Sure.
Heavy.
It's crazy. I mean, it's just
That's
like
so much.
A crazy amount of money.
I saw something the other day that was like the difference between 1,000,000 seconds and 1,000,000,000 seconds is that 1,000,000 seconds is like 2 weeks or whatever. You know, I can't do math. It's like 2 weeks or something. And or a year or whatever. I don't know. Could be any number. You could tell me and I'd believe it. Could be a month.
It could be a month.
1 billion seconds is like 32 years. They're like, think about the difference in those two numbers, whatever they were. And I was like, oh, I don't even know what 1 billion means. Like, that's crazy.
What is numbers? I don't know.
What is numbers? Okay, let's talk about drugs.
Oh, I'm down. Let's talk about drugs.
Perfect. Okay. So there are 5 FDA-approved drugs. Nudexa treats the episodic... Okay, this is a weird thing that happens with people with ALS. There are these episodes of, like, laughing and crying spells that are inappropriate. Do you know what I mean?
Most of those are.
Right. Not unfair. But they happen, like, really out of context. Like, someone will just randomly start crying, and you're like, whoa, what? Riluzone is another drug, and it inhibits the release of the neurotransmitter called glutamate, and it slightly prolongs the life expectancy by about 3 months, so that's cool. Recently, in 2017, there's a drug called Radicava that was approved by the FDA, and it was the first actual ALS treatment approved by the FDA in 22 years.
What the fuck are they waiting
So it's been a really long time. Yes. ALS people are very mad at the FDA.
Yeah, I'm mad at the FDA.
Right. It takes 10 years, about 10 years, to get one of these drugs through approval when the average life expectancy for these people is 14 months.
Yeah.
And they're like,
Yeah.
we're all
They don't have
dying.
time.
Like, it doesn't matter. What I heard one of them say is, like, if you use drugs on us that don't work, it doesn't matter because we're dying in 14 months anyway. And I want to go back to the problem really quickly about like why these drugs are so expensive to develop. And ALS is really, really underfunded, which is horribly sad. So going back really quickly to the Ice Bucket Challenge from 2018, the idea was to simulate the numbing effect that people with ALS feel. So that's why you dumped ice on yourself.
Oh.
Yeah. And to raise awareness and funds for ALS on social media, which it actually did to a pretty astounding degree. I mean, it was really popular for a short period of time. I don't know. I'm sure you remember that.
Yeah.
But over the course of a few months, the ALS Association received $115 million in donations from across the globe. That money was directly...
That's a lot.
Right. That money was directly tied with the discovery of 4 brand new genes associated with the disease and the invention of an assistive device which restores the natural voice of ALS patients who have lost their voice.
Good.
Isn't that crazy? I want to go back really quickly to the fact that the ALS, people with ALS and people who run these organizations have been lobbying congressional committees for a really long time. They've been lobbying the FDA. They've been asking for more money for a long time because a lot of people basically believe that it's just the fact that it's underfunded is the reason that we don't have a cure yet.
You know what else that's trash? Is that they probably have such a low chance of survival that people don't care. I mean, really.
Yeah, honestly, that might be it. One of the co-founders of an organization called ALS is named Brian Walsh, and he testified in front of the House Appropriations Subcommittee on Labor, Health and Human Services, Education, and Related Agencies regarding the need for increased funding for ALS in 2019. And during his testimony, he said that when he was told his diagnosis, he went home and held his family tight because, in his words, an ALS diagnosis means he will not see his daughters grow up.
Yep.
It's a death sentence.
100%.
And he says that this is largely the case because ALS research is underfunded year after year. He told the subcommittee, "I am here today to ask you to rewrite my ALS story." Many believe that ALS is not actually incurable and it just needs more funding. We spend anywhere between 3 and 16 times as much on diseases that kill fewer people than ALS every single year, so it's not a matter of if, but when we find a cure.
Yeah, and it's like at what expense, right?
Exactly. The organization that I was talking about that this guy founded is called I Am ALS, and it focuses on patients and their caregivers who share their experiences, raise awareness, and advocate for a cure. Last year, they celebrated the second straight year that the Department of Defense budget towards ALS research doubled to $40 million for 2021, and the National Institute of Health promised to invest $25 million over the next 5 years, which is still not nearly what is needed.
Should have been $25 million
Agreed.
in 1 year. But
Right.
Okay.
It's still not anywhere close to what is needed, but since it was started, I Am ALS says it helped increase federal funding for research by $83 million, which has helped launch dozens of new clinical trials.
Yeah.
Yeah, that guy's life story, Brian Walsh, was a staffer for Obama.
Oh.
That's how he and his wife met. They were both staffers for Obama.
Damn.
His life story is very, very interesting. He's so cool.
Gonna Google him.
Yeah, you definitely should. So the last thing I want to talk about is some promising research.
Thank God, because this whole thing has been a fucking bummer.
Yes, and I'm so sorry for that. But I feel like it's a really important thing to talk about.
No, 100%. This is what we do. We talk about things that are bummers and we try and solve the problem.
Correct. And we know what the problem is here. The problem is money. So There were a few articles published on June 22nd of this year, so not very long ago.
So just
a second ago, which is what gave me the idea for this episode. For the first time in a while, they offered some truly promising news on the ALS research front. The director of the Penn Comprehensive ALS Center that I talked about earlier, they're like the ALS experts, says that for the first time, they're looking down the barrel of creating targeted therapeutic strategies for ALS. They're involved in a phase 3 clinical trial, meaning they're actually treating patients with something called Biogen Valor. They believe that this, along with another drug called AMX0035, maybe they'll come up with a catchier title before it hits the market.
Hopefully.
They think this drug may help slow the disease progression by 22%, extending the life of patients who took it by up to 7 months, which is amazing.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
So, what we need is focused research, more money. Like, people with ALS deserve a fighting chance, and they deserve someone in their corner saying, like, we believe in making your life better.
Yeah. Yeah, 1,000%. 1,000%.
So that's what I know about ALS.
Damn, that was sad as fuck, but so interesting.
Right?
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, that's ALS. I'll post all my sources in our show notes if you're interested in looking at those. Also, if you're looking for like one organization to support or check out, I think I Am ALS is a very, very good one to support because they're actually, increasing the government spending on ALS, which I think is what needs to happen.
Yeah.
And that's what I know about that.
So, if you like this episode, you can smash that subscribe button.
Smash it.
Smash it. Follow us on our social medias. Hit us up if you have an idea for a episode. And shout out to my sister Rebecca, who just got engaged. She's a steady listener, very dedicated.
Hope she made it to the end of this one.
Hopefully you made it through. Otherwise, you're going to be mad at me. And shout out to Corey, who did okay. But she has...
Shout out to Corey, who only panted loudly for half the time.
Severe anxiety, party of one.
Party of 3, honestly.
I know.
The 3 of us together.
Birds of a feather.
Anxiety Squad.
Oh, that's a good name for like a girls singing group.
The Anxiety Squad?
Yeah.
TM, that's trademarked.
Did we just rename the Malpals?
Oh my god, that's our new thing. Join the Anxiety Squad on Facebook.
Wow, imagine. Bye.
Bye.
Boo-doo, boo-doo-doo.